When Officer Claire Donovan answered a late-night call on a deserted street, she thought she'd found just another victim. But the dying woman's final words led her into a world of hidden money, dead witnesses, and a secret powerful enough to destroy an entire city. What began as one crime scene became a battle for truth inside her own department, and what happened next shocked everyone. If you're new here, subscribe for more stories that keep you guessing until the very last line. The night it began, the rain fell like it had something to hide. In a city where neon signs drowned in puddles and sirens blended into the rhythm of insomnia, Officer Claire Whitman drove her patrol car down the empty stretch of Harbor Avenue, her headlights slicing through the wet dark. She had worked homicide long enough to know when a night was trying to tell her something, and this one whispered wrong from the start. Her shift was nearly over when dispatch crackled in her ear. Unit 12, we've got a possible 10 to 54, female, corner of 5th and Monroe. Caller reports not breathing. Claire sighed, thumbed the radio. Copy that. On my way. Another body, another file, she thought. She didn't know yet that the woman lying on that cracked sidewalk would change everything she believed about her job, her city, and herself. When she arrived, the flashing lights from another cruiser painted the wet pavement in red and blue. A small crowd huddled under umbrellas despite the storm, their faces pale and curious. Claire pushed through them, her boots splashing in the runoff, and the paramedics were already kneeling beside the woman. Young, mid-20s maybe, her skin dark as the night around her, her dress torn at the shoulder. There was a streak of blood along her neck, thin but deliberate, like someone had drawn it there with purpose. Claire crouched down, the rain slipping off her hat brim. "What have we got?" she asked. The medic shook his head. "Still alive when we got here, but she's fading fast. No ID. Someone said she came out of the alley before collapsing." Claire looked toward the alley, a narrow slit between two old brick buildings, garbage bins lined up like shadows. Something about it felt staged. The woman's lips moved, barely. Claire leaned in. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" "What happened?" The voice that came out was barely audible, carried on the edge of a breath. He wasn't supposed to be there. Then her eyes rolled back, her chest stilled, and the medic swore under his breath. Time of death, 11:47 p.m. Claire stood, rainwater running down her coat sleeve, staring at the lifeless face before her. He wasn't supposed to be there. The words echoed in her head like a riddle. She turned to the nearest bystander, a man in a soaked hoodie. Did anyone see who she was with? The man shrugged. She came from the alley, stumbling. Nobody followed. She just dropped. Claire looked down again. There was something clenched in the woman's left hand, a small silver pendant, twisted and broken. She bagged it, handed the scene to forensics, but her mind was already spinning. No ID, no witnesses, just a dying whisper and a pendant. It wasn't much, but it was enough to spark that quiet pull she'd felt too many times, the one that meant this case wasn't just random. By morning, she was back at her desk, the smell of stale coffee and damp paper thick in the air. Captain Morris leaned over her shoulder. "You didn't have to stay, Whitman. Let homicide take it." Claire didn't look up. "Already did. And I'm homicide, remember?" He frowned. "You haven't slept." She shrugged. "Sleep's overrated." The captain sighed. "Fine. But keep it clean. The press is already stirring." By the second day, the MES report came in. Cause of death, strangulation, with defensive wounds suggesting a struggle. No drugs, no alcohol. Whoever did it knew what they were doing. Claire studied the autopsy photos, then the pendant again under the light. It wasn't jewelry, it was part of something bigger, maybe broken off a chain or bracelet. Etched on the back was a barely visible mark, an engraving that looked like the letter R followed by 3 numbers, 217. A code, maybe, or an ID tag. She started canvassing nearby businesses. Most were closed that night, but a corner deli had a camera facing the street. The owner, a short man with nervous hands, played back the footage. Around 11:30 p.m., the camera caught a figure running out of the alley, the victim. Seconds later, behind her, a man stepped halfway into the light, then stopped, watching her fall. His face wasn't visible, but he wore a distinctive dark coat with a single white stripe on the sleeve. Then he turned back into the alley and vanished. Claire froze the frame. "Can you enhance this?" The owner shook his head. "That's as clear as it gets." But it was enough. The code was police issued, from their department. She didn't say it out loud. Just thanked the owner and left, her stomach tightening. A cop's jacket. Could be coincidence, surplus store, old issue. But something about the stride, the squared shoulders, looked familiar. Back at the precinct, she scrolled through recent duty rosters, cross-referencing who was out that night. 7 officers had similar jackets, including her partner, Sergeant Tom Rourke. Tom was solid, been on the force 12 years, steady hands, dry humor. But he'd called in sick that night. Claire felt a flicker of unease. She picked up her phone. He answered on the second ring. "Claire, you up early? You said you were sick." "Was. Got food poisoning." "Why?" "Just checking." A pause. "You sound off. Everything okay?" She hesitated. "Yeah, just a weird case." "Yeah, you always find those," he chuckled. But his laugh didn't sound like him. That evening, Claire sat in her car outside his house, engine off, rain starting again. She told herself she was being ridiculous. But then the door opened, and Tom stepped out, pulling on that same dark coat with the white stripe. He looked around, then headed toward his car, talking on his phone. She lowered her window just enough to catch fragments. "No, she's gone. I told you I handled it." "No." She didn't say anything. Her pulse kicked up. He turned, and for a moment, his eyes met hers through the dim streetlight. Then her phone buzzed, an unknown number, text only. "Stop digging, Officer Whitman. You don't know who you're protecting." She looked up again. Tom's car was gone. The next day, her report to the captain was short, factual, and incomplete. She didn't mention Tom. She didn't mention the text. She knew how that would look, and she didn't know who she could trust. Instead, she dug deeper. The pendant's engraving led her to a warehouse district near the river. Unit 217 belonged to a storage company that supposedly housed old evidence boxes for the city. But when she got there, the lock was new, and the air inside smelled like bleach. Rows of boxes lined the walls, unmarked. In the center was a table, and on it, a stack of photos, surveillance stills of the dead woman with different men, some wearing police uniforms. Claire felt the ground tilt. This wasn't a random murder. The woman had been connected to someone on the inside. She flipped through the photos until one stopped her cold. Tom, sitting in a diner with the victim, his hand on hers. The timestamp read 2 nights before her death. She barely had time to react before a sound echoed from behind, a click, unmistakable. The sound of a gun being cocked. "Put it down, Claire," came Tom's voice, calm but tight. She turned slowly, heart hammering, the photos still in her hand. He stood in the doorway, rain dripping off his coat. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "I could ask you the same. You knew her." His jaw tightened. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." He hesitated, then sighed. "She was an informant. She came to me scared, said someone in the department was using her to cover dirty money, trafficking, protection rackets. She wanted out. So what happened? She panicked. Said she had proof, threatened to go public. I told her I'd fix it. The next day, she was gone. You expect me to believe you had nothing to do with it?" His expression darkened. "You think I killed her? I think you're lying to me." Before he could answer, another voice echoed from outside. "Drop the gun, Sergeant." The captain stepped into view, flanked by 2 officers. Claire blinked in confusion. "Captain." Morris's face was hard. "Step away from him, Whitman. He's under investigation." "For what?" "For the same thing he just told you." He glanced at Tom. "You should have stayed quiet." Tom looked at Claire, eyes full of something between anger and regret. "You shouldn't have come here." Then he turned the gun on the captain. Tom's hand trembled as he leveled the weapon at Captain Morris, the echo of rain hitting the metal roof filling the silence between them. Claire stood motionless, her breath shallow, her mind cataloging every exit, every flicker of movement. The captain's voice was low but steady. "Don't do this, Sergeant. You've already buried yourself deep enough." Tom's eyes flicked toward Claire. "He's lying," he said, his voice cracking. "He's part of it." Morris didn't flinch. "You see what happens, Whitman. Guilt eats them alive." The thunder outside rolled like a warning. Claire's finger tightened on her holster, though she hadn't drawn. "Tom, put it down. You can talk your way out of this, but not if you pull that trigger." He shook his head. "You don't understand. They'll kill me either way." Claire took a slow step forward. "Who will?" His mouth opened, but the answer never came. A gunshot split the air, deafening in the confined space. Tom stumbled backward, a dark bloom spreading across his chest. The captain's weapon was raised, smoke curling from the barrel. He reached for it, Morris said quickly, but Claire hadn't seen him move. Tom hit the ground, gasping. She dropped beside him, pressing her hands against the wound. "Stay with me, Tom, stay with me." His eyes found hers, unfocused. "Locker, 17, River Docks," his voice trailed into nothing. Claire stared at the captain, her heart hammering. "You didn't have to shoot." Morris holstered his weapon with practiced calm. He made his choice. He turned to the other officers. "Clear the scene. I'll handle the paperwork." But something in his tone sounded too rehearsed, too ready. She watched him walk away, her hands still slick with Tom's blood, the echo of his last words looping through her mind. "Locker 17, River Docks." By the time the scene was sealed, dawn had broken over the skyline, gray and thin. Claire sat in her car outside the precinct, the smell of cordite and rain still clinging to her clothes. She replayed the warehouse in her head, frame by frame. Tom hadn't raised his gun again after lowering it. He'd been trying to speak. And the captain's reaction had been too quick, too final. She drove to the river district as the city woke up, the streets damp and slick, gulls circling above the rusted cranes. The old storage lockers sat along the pier, numbered and rust-streaked. Number 17 was halfway down the row, its padlock new, its edges still clean from a recent cut. She picked the latch easily, slipped inside, and found a single crate covered with a tarp. Beneath it, she discovered a folder stamped Property of Internal Affairs, but the contents didn't match any case she knew. Photographs of officers, some active, some retired, meeting with known gang affiliates. Money drops. Signatures. At the bottom, a single sheet bearing the name of Captain Edward Morris. Her throat tightened. He wasn't just part of it, he was running it. Footsteps sounded outside the locker, heavy and deliberate. She slipped the folder into her jacket just as the door creaked open. It wasn't Morris, it was a man she didn't recognize, wearing a city maintenance uniform. His expression was too alert for a worker. "You shouldn't be here, detective." "Officer," she corrected automatically, hand inching toward her sidearm. "Same difference," he said, closing the door behind him. "You have something that doesn't belong to you." "You mean evidence." "I mean a death wish." He lunged, and she ducked, her shoulder slamming into the wall as the folder slid across the floor. He grabbed for it, but she kicked him back, the force sending him into the metal frame. The locker rang like a drum. She drew her gun, breath ragged. "Stay down." He smirked, blood trickling from his lip. "You think shooting me fixes anything? He's got eyes everywhere." "Who?" she demanded. But he only laughed, a low, broken sound, and before she could stop him, he pulled a small knife and plunged it into his own throat. The scream stuck in her chest. She pressed a hand to his neck, but it was useless, he was gone in seconds. Outside, a horn blared, and she realized she'd been inside for too long. She wiped her hands, grabbed the folder, and slipped out the back, weaving through the shipping containers until she reached her car. Every instinct told her she was being watched. When she checked the rearview mirror, a black sedan was idling 3 cars back. She turned left, then right, but it followed. She reached for her phone and called dispatch. "This is Officer Whitman. I need a trace on a vehicle, black Crown Vic, unmarked." The line went dead. Static filled her ear, sharp and mechanical. She tossed the phone onto the passenger seat and accelerated through the next intersection, tires screeching. The sedan followed until a train crossing forced her to stop. She jumped out, folder in hand, sprinted across the tracks as the barrier dropped. The horn of the passing freight train drowned out the city. On the other side, she found cover behind a warehouse and waited until the cars passed. The sedan was gone when she looked back, replaced by the heavy quiet of early morning. She leaned against the wall, trembling. The folder felt heavier than it should. She opened it again, scanning the documents for any pattern that could explain why Morris's name was mixed with so many others. Then she saw it, a list of payments labeled, Community Initiative Fund. Each entry bore signatures of officers and business owners. It looked legitimate until she recognized one of the civilian names, Valerie James, the victim. Valerie hadn't been a random informant or a casualty, she had been part of whatever scheme Morris had built and had turned on them. That was why she'd been silenced. Claire felt the chill sink deeper. Every line in that file pointed to something much bigger than corruption. It was a network, stitched into the fabric of the department and the city itself. She folded the papers back together and glanced toward the river. The morning light painted the surface in dull silver, but underneath she saw movement, ripples breaking against the pylons. For a moment, she thought she saw a reflection, a shape watching her from beneath the bridge. By noon, she was back in her apartment, shades drawn. She laid the file out on the kitchen table, connecting the names with pen marks, trying to find a pattern that made sense. A knock came at her door, 3 short, 1 long. Police code for safe contact. She checked the peephole. A woman in plain clothes stood outside, badge visible. "Detective Lena Cruz, Internal Affairs," she said when Claire opened the door a crack. "We need to talk." Claire hesitated, then stepped aside. "About Morris. About everything." Lena looked exhausted, her eyes ringed with fatigue. "You've stirred up something that's been festering for years." "You knew." "I suspected," Lena said, lowering her voice. "But nobody inside would testify. The ones who tried ended up transferred, fired, or worse. That file you've got, that's their kill list." Claire's stomach turned. "So what do we do?" "We get it to the feds before Morris realizes it's missing. He's got friends in every local office." Lena reached for the folder, but something about the way her hand shook made Claire pause. "You sure Uriah? You can call my supervisor if you want," Lena said quickly, but her eyes darted to the window. Claire followed her gaze, just in time to see a red dot dance across the curtain. "Get down," she shouted, diving as the glass exploded inward. The bullet tore through the air, shredding the wall behind them. Claire rolled, grabbed her weapon, and fired twice toward the glint on the rooftop across the street. The shooter vanished. When the dust settled, Lena was bleeding from her arm, her badge bent on the floor. "He found us," she gasped. Claire tore a towel from the counter and pressed it against the wound. "You're lucky," she said. "He was aiming for your head." Lena winced. "You're good under pressure. Comes with the badge." Claire looked at the shattered window, her thoughts racing. "We can't stay here. He'll send more." Lena nodded, pale but steady. "There's a safe house outside the city. We go there, regroup, and figure out how to leak the file." Claire grabbed her keys. "Then let's move." As they drove out of the city, the skyline shrinking behind them, Claire felt a hollow ache settle in her chest. Tom was dead, Morris was the spider at the center of the web, and somewhere in the shadows, someone was willing to kill anyone who got too close to the truth. The rain began again, light at first, then heavy, washing the windshield until the road ahead blurred into silver. Claire tightened her grip on the wheel. For the first time in years, she wasn't sure which side of the badge she stood on anymore. The storm trailed them north until the highway straightened into open fields. Rain kept a rhythm on the roof of the car, a sound that filled the silence neither woman wanted to break. Lena sat with her arm wrapped in a scarf, staring at the gray horizon. Claire's hands stayed tight on the wheel, her thoughts looping through everything that had brought her here: the woman on the pavement, Tom's last words, the captain's steady aim. She didn't want to say it aloud, but the pattern was clear: whoever controlled the network was already 2 steps ahead. The safe house sat behind an abandoned diner off Route 6, a squat brick building half swallowed by ivy. Inside, the air smelled of dust and motor oil. Lena moved first, checking the rooms with the caution of someone who had done this before. "No alarms, no heat signatures," she said finally. "We're clean, for now." Claire dropped the folder on the kitchen table. Its edges were damp, the ink beginning to run. "If this goes missing again, we're finished." Lena nodded, opening her laptop and connecting through a secure line. "I'm sending a copy to an encrypted drive. Even if they find us, the evidence won't die with us." Claire studied her. "You've done this before. Too many times," Lena said. "Every time we think we've cornered the truth, it shifts. Someone higher up pulls the strings." They worked in silence for an hour. Outside, the rain eased, replaced by the soft hum of insects waking to the damp air. Claire spread the photos across the table, arranging them into groups: officers, civilians, known gang members. She traced a line between names, following payments from city accounts to front companies. "These aren't just payoffs," she said quietly. "They're contracts, security services, consulting fees. It's all hidden in legitimate paperwork." Lena leaned closer. And all routed through the same foundation. The Community Initiative Fund. Claire pointed to a signature that appeared on nearly every page. E. Morris. The captain used the fund to launder everything. Lena's expression hardened. Then why risk killing people? He already had the money. Because Valerie must have found the same pattern, Claire said. Maybe she wanted to expose it, or maybe she wanted a cut. She hesitated. Tom tried to protect her. When she died, he must have known the captain would make him next. The room fell quiet again. Somewhere outside, a branch scraped against the siding like a warning. By evening, the rain stopped. Claire stepped outside to clear her head. The air smelled of wet earth and rusted metal. Across the highway, the diner's neon sign flickered back to life, though no one had turned it on. She frowned. "Lena," she called, "you didn't reconnect the power, did you?" "No, why?" The light went out again, then glowed faintly red, pulsing in slow intervals. Lena joined her at the doorway. Could be a short, but Claire had spent too many years reading patterns. Or a signal, she murmured. They retreated inside, killed their lights, and waited. 10 minutes later, headlights appeared on the highway, slowing near the diner before continuing north. The tension ebbed, replaced by fatigue. Lena sank into a chair. "I can't tell if we're being careful or paranoid anymore." Claire gave a tired smile. With Morris, the difference doesn't matter. When morning came, Claire used a public phone at a nearby gas station to call an old contact at the State Bureau, a quiet analyst named Marcus who owed her favors. "I need a trace on an account," she said. "Community Initiative Fund, routed through city development grants." He hesitated. "That name's come up before. You sure you want in on that?" "I already am." "Then meet me tomorrow." Off record. She hung up, watching a newspaper dispenser sway in the wind. The front page carried a headline, "Officer under investigation found dead." Tom's name wasn't printed, but the article hinted at it, suspected involvement in ongoing corruption probe. Claire crumpled the page, anger flashing through the fog of exhaustion. Someone was rewriting the story before the truth even surfaced. Back at the safe house, Lena was asleep on the couch, the laptop still glowing faintly beside her. Claire poured coffee, its bitterness grounding her. She stared at the folder again. Every discovery only widened the circle. It wasn't just one captain or one precinct, it touched city officials, business leaders, and maybe federal liaisons. She thought of Valerie's final words, "He wasn't supposed to be there." Maybe she hadn't meant Tom at all. Maybe she'd meant Morris, or whoever Morris answered to. That night, Claire dreamed of the alley again. The woman's face turned toward her, lips moving without sound. Behind her, shadows stretched like threads weaving into the shape of the city itself. When she woke, the clock read 3:17 a.m., and a faint buzzing came from the corner of the room. Lena's laptop screen showed a new file uploading automatically, one they hadn't opened. Claire rushed over and unplugged the modem, but the progress bar froze at 98%. "What did you do?" she whispered. Lena stirred, confused. "What's wrong?" "Someone hacked the line. They know where we are." They packed in minutes. The dawn was just beginning to lighten the sky when they left the safe house, taking a back road through the woods. Claire drove without headlights until the trees thinned and a small town appeared ahead. "We can't keep running forever," Lena said. "No," Claire agreed. "But if we stop now, everything dies with us." She pulled over at a diner that looked cleaner than the others, a place that smelled of coffee and truck grease. Inside, they took a booth by the window. Claire slid the folder across the table. "You said we needed the feds. I think I know how to reach them without going through local channels." She explained quietly how Marcus had promised to meet in a federal annex outside the Capitol, a place where Morris's influence might not reach. Lena listened, her expression unreadable. When Claire finished, Lena said, "Then we go today." Claire nodded, but something about Lena's calm made her pause. "You don't seem surprised that we were traced." "I'm just tired of being surprised," Lena said, but her gaze dropped to the folder. Claire noticed it, the slightest hesitation before she touched it. The drive to the Capitol took 4 hours. Traffic thickened as they approached the outskirts, sunlight glinting off mirrored buildings. Marcus had chosen an old courthouse-turned-office block. He waited by the steps, tall, plain-faced, carrying a briefcase. "You didn't tell me you were bringing company," he said as they climbed out. "Internal affairs," Lena said smoothly, flashing her badge. We're on the same side. Marcus gestured toward the door. Let's get inside. Too many ears out here. They followed him through metal detectors that no longer worked, down a hallway that smelled of damp paper and disinfectant. Inside a small records room, Marcus locked the door and opened his case. You wanted the account trail, he said, spreading printouts across the table. It's worse than you thought. The fund isn't just city money, it's federal. Disaster relief grants diverted through dummy nonprofits. He pointed to a line of signatures. Whoever set this up had clearance I don't even have. Claire's pulse quickened. So Morris answers to someone higher. Marcus nodded. Someone with enough power to erase files in real time. The moment I pulled these, the system flagged me. We've got minutes before. The lights flickered. Then the building alarms wailed. Marcus looked up sharply. Before they find us. The alarms howled through the old courthouse, echoing off the stone like a warning from another century. Claire's first instinct was to grab the papers, but Marcus shook his head. Leave them. They're already compromised. He slid a flash drive across the table. Everything on here is offline. Get it to someone you trust. Lena opened the door just a crack. Red lights strobed down the corridor, and distant footsteps clanged against the stairwell. Claire pocketed the drive and pulled Lena with her toward the rear exit. Marcus stayed behind, jamming the lock with a metal bar. Go. I'll hold them off long enough to wipe the servers. His words disappeared beneath the shriek of the alarm. They moved fast, slipping down a back hallway that emptied into the parking lot. Sirens rose somewhere outside, real ones this time. Police cars, unmarked vans. Lena's voice trembled. They're coming in heavy. Keep walking, Claire said. Run and we look guilty. They reached her car just as the front doors of the courthouse burst open and officers poured out. Claire kept her head down, merged with the stream of bystanders, and pulled away before anyone checked their plates. The city swallowed them again. For an hour they drove in silence. The storm had passed, leaving the air sharp and clear. Claire's hands ached from gripping the wheel. She glanced at Lena, who stared out the window. We can't go back, Lena said. Morris will call us fugitives. Then we go forward, Claire replied. There's one place left that still owes me a favor. She headed for a small investigative newsroom on the south side, a place that had once exposed political fraud before losing its funding. The editor, Dana, met them at the door, tired eyes, nicotine-stained fingers. You look like hell, she said. You always did when you had a story worth telling. Claire handed her the flash drive. This one's bigger than anything we ever chased. You run it, you save lives. But if you mess it up, we're dead. Dana nodded slowly. You're serious. Dead serious. They stayed while the newsroom's last functioning server decrypted the files. On the screen, line after line of transactions unfolded, contracts, internal memos, signed authorizations. Everything tied back to Morris, and above him, a consortium of developers who had siphoned disaster funds meant for rebuilding neighborhoods. The Community Initiative Fund had been a cover, feeding police overtime budgets and campaign donations. Morris had kept it quiet by using officers as couriers and silencing anyone who got curious. Valerie James had been both courier and witness, until she realized what she was part of. Dana leaned back, rubbing her temples. You have any idea what happens when this goes public? That's the point, Claire said. Let them scramble. Lena exhaled. If it's that clean, the feds will have to move. They will, Dana said, but not before someone tries to stop us. You'll need to disappear until it breaks. They left the newsroom at dusk, the air heavy with the smell of hot asphalt. Claire drove them toward the river where the city lights rippled across the water. It's strange, she said quietly. All this time I thought justice was a straight line. Turns out it's a maze. Lena smiled faintly. You still believe in it, though. Claire thought for a long moment. Maybe that's the only way it works, someone has to. 2 days later, the story hit every major outlet. The files had spread faster than anyone could bury them. A dozen officials were indicted, the mayor resigned, and Captain Morris vanished before his warrant was served. Anonymous sources within the department confirmed the existence of the slush fund, and Valerie James's name reappeared in headlines as the whistleblower who had tried to tell the truth. Claire watched it unfold from a motel on the edge of town. She didn't celebrate. She just sat there, the glow of the television painting her face pale blue. When Lena returned from the store, she said quietly, "You did it." Claire shook her head. We did it. But it cost more than it should have. She turned off the TV. There's one thing left to do. They met Dana at the river docks where it had all begun. The warehouse was sealed, marked as federal evidence now, but the air still smelled of rain and oil. Claire placed a small box on the ground. Inside, the silver pendant Valerie had clutched that night. She started this, Claire said. It's only right she ends it. Dana nodded, and for a moment the three of them stood in silence, the city humming in the distance. A week later, Claire turned in her badge. She told the review board she needed distance, but the truth was simpler. She wanted to remember what it felt like to see the world without suspicion. As she left the precinct for the last time, she passed a wall of old photographs, officers, award ceremonies, memories of better days. In one frame, Tom's smile looked young again, untouched by the years that followed. She paused, touched the glass, and whispered, "You were right." Outside, sunlight spilled over the steps. She walked toward the street where traffic roared and people hurried past, unaware of the quiet battle that had just shifted beneath their feet. For the first time in months, she felt something close to peace. Justice wasn't perfect, but it had finally caught up. That closes the story with a realistic conclusion. The network exposed, Claire's conscience intact but changed by what she's seen.